Welcome, first of all, to the annual meeting of the Harvard Varsity Club. And I'm really happy to see all your faces. I so wish we were in person, but we're going to get there one of these days, and then we'll really have some fun. But tonight, I'm really excited and very honored to be introducing our guest. And we're going to start right off with that because I think it's really what everyone has come to see and hear. Our guest is Gabby Thomas, class of 2019, an American track and field athlete. As you all know, she is the third fastest woman of all time in the 200 meter with her result of 21.61 seconds, which was set in the 2020 US Olympic trials. That time made her, Gabby represented the US in the 2020 Tokyo Olympics as well. And she won an individual bronze medal in the 200 meter race and a team silver at those Summer Olympics. And while at Harvard, this I find really interesting. She studied neurobiology and global health as an undergraduate. We've had a lot of conversations, I think all of us, around science majors and pre-med majors and playing sports. So all the more impressive, Gabby. And she's currently pursuing a master's degree at the University of Texas at Austin in epidemiology. So there's lots that we get to learn from Gabby today. I had the pleasure of seeing her on stage at ESPNW, which was a cool sports event for kick-ass women, and she was there. So it's very cool. So welcome, Gabby. And as many of you know, one of our moderators with Gabby is going to be Ngozi Musa. As you know, she's been on our board for, a little while, a year about Ngozi. She's class of 2019 and a track and field teammate of Gabby's. Ngozi and Gabby trained and competed together and against each other while they were at Harvard. So as I researched this story the last couple of days, I learned that they became best friends as freshmen, and Ngozi was even in Eugene, Oregon to support Gabby in that Olympic trial epic moment of that record 200 meter race, and just really cool. So I think it's going to be even more fun to hear their conversation, given that they know each other so well and they're such fast friends and have been together for a while, supporting each other. I got to know Ngozi this past year and a half in our work on an event that the Varsity Club hosted, which I think many of you were participating on in that Zoom. It was called Race, Sport, and Harvard and Conversations and Active Steps Towards Change, which was an event intended to give Black members of the community a platform to share their voices and experiences, discuss the role that athletic plays in breaking down barriers and bringing people together, and provide resources and encouragement to all members of our community to become more educated on the ways in which we can all join the fight for social justice. And I think we're still in that and still working hard. So welcome, Ngozi. Thank you. Thank you for being part of this. She's equally as awesome. And I'm sure the conversation we're about to hear will be rich with stories of aspirations and dreams, hurdles, challenges, celebrations, disappointments, everything in between, maybe some fun stories about Pinocchios. But thank you both for being here tonight. And I turn it over to the two of you for our enjoyment, and people will, have the opportunity to ask a couple questions, or if you'd like to put it in the chat, I can help make sure that Gabby can get your questions answered.
Yeah, thanks, JoJo. That was an amazing introduction. Yeah, Ngozi and I go way back. I think Ngozi and I ended up being best friends like the second we stepped foot on campus for what is it, Visitas? We were inseparable since then. Actually, our entire freshman Harvard track and field class became pretty close friends. And I actually convinced Ngozi to move to Austin a couple months ago.
So now we both live in Austin together.
Yeah, there's no separating the two of us. It's always been Ngozi and Gabby. And we actually have a few other Harvard track alum down here in Austin these days. So yeah, and kind of sticks together. It really is your team for life.
Yes, it really is. Well, it's a pleasure to kind of be on this side of the coin, Gabby, to talk to you about your experience and how Harvard has kind of shaped that, influenced that, to be where you are today as a two-time Olympic medalist and graduate student at UT. When you first started, I know where we were when you first started your Harvard experience. That's kind of where I want to start. Obviously, we spend a lot of time together on and off the track, but I'd love to know kind of how Harvard, both on the track, our coaches in the classroom, and your professors kind of played a role in preparing you when you turned pro and started training for the Olympics.
Yeah. So turning pro as a Harvard varsity athlete was definitely a very, very unique experience. It's not something that I went into college expecting. It wasn't even something that was on my radar, and not something that many people would expect to be on my radar, right? You don't typically hear that people are going to Harvard to be a professional track athlete. You go to Harvard for other experiences and to do other things. And normally that's just not really the aim. But the reason why I ended up choosing Harvard just out of high school was because I knew that I was going to be able to get the experience and pursue excellence athletically and academically and what other extracurricular activities that I wanted to do. And mainly that was because of the coach. Coach Tolbert, when he recruited me, he had this vision for the team that, I hadn't quite seen in the other teams that were recruiting me, including outside of the Ivy Leagues like Duke and Stanford. The culture of the Harvard track team just really drew me to it because I knew that I could push myself to be the best version of myself, whether that be on the track or off of the track. So ultimately, I do feel like that foundation that I was given through my coach and the training group that I ended up being a part of set me up tremendously for my professional career. I think it really set me up just to have like that longevity that I think other athletes don't really have. And when I talk about like the foundational things that I gathered from it, it would be mindset training. It would be work ethic training. It's balancing other things, dealing with adversity, those types of things that we were kind of supplied with. And I know Ngozi can probably attest to that too. It was a very unique experience, and everything wasn't just about getting those fast times like on the track, right? Every day of practice wasn't just like, okay, if you don't run this time, you lose your scholarship. It was about actually us growing as people and as athletes. And that was such an invaluable experience that I think gave me kind of the leg up on pretty much every athlete that I come across now in the pro circuit, especially, we might get into this later, but especially with dealing with the COVID pandemic during that year. And just the mindset and everything that I gained from my experience at Harvard just put me ahead a little bit for that. That being said, our freshman year was pretty challenging. There were a lot of moments where I felt like I was going to quit. I think Ngozi can also attest to that. There were just so many moments where we weren't sure if we were able to just do it, because we were expected to compete at such a high level of excellence like every other D1 track school. But at the same time, I really wanted to pursue certain things in academics, right? I had declared neurobiology and I was very dedicated to that. I had taken this course by Professor Hammonds called Sick and Tired of Being Sick and Tired. And it made me very interested in going into research and health disparities. And then, as everyone knows, there are so many other things at Harvard that you want to do and explore, and you want to really dive into it. So I think it was a little bit challenging for us to kind of balance all of those things. And it was a huge learning curve. But I think in having that experience and that pushing me and forcing me to do and juggle all of those things with excellence really prepared me to be pro. I just have like a very level-headed mindset on everything. I'm able to manage my time so much better now. And I think one of the great things about it as well is now that I've graduated from Harvard and I've taken advantage of these opportunities, now I do other things outside of track while also pursuing my pro career. And I think that's really, really healthy. When I moved to Austin, I volunteered at a volunteer healthcare clinic my first year here. And then I ended up applying to grad school and going to grad school. So now I'm in my graduate classes as well at the same time that I'm training. And I'm also interning at a company called Leidos and, researching some health equity issues that are really important to me. So having those opportunities to step away from the track and kind of recharge myself in other ways is really helpful and really makes me appreciate my time on the track. So ultimately, a long-winded way to say, I think my coach has provided me with so many foundational skills that that is very unique to my Harvard experience. And my professors have provided me with opportunities to do other things off of the track that make me feel recharged and energized and excited about going to the track every day. And those are just very unique experiences coming from Harvard.
Yeah, I think you said something really important. You kept saying it, the aspect of balance and kind of balancing on and off the track, what that looked like. I remember when we used to like go from track practice to run to Annenberg to eat and then to the MQC to do work. We were always trying to get places and figure out how to balance all those things. But I would ask, like, in terms of like balancing running and studying at Harvard, being nearby contract trader, and then now or last year during COVID, like having such a long year of training for the Olympics and balancing getting your MPH, what was kind of similar about the experience? What was kind of different about the experience? Obviously, it's not the same experience, but it's still balancing studying and running.
Yeah. So I think like I said before, like my freshman year really struggled with it. I know Ngozi just knows that we had so many like sessions where we just had to talk it out with each other. We prayed together and like just had to go through it. And it was very, very tough, but ultimately I did end up getting my footing. When I was a freshman, I was very committed to neurobio. After my freshman year, I did a internship at Boston Children's Hospital studying autism, Rett syndrome, which is a form of autism. And that's ultimately what I wanted to go into neurobiology for, was to do research. And that same summer that I was doing research was also the 2016 Olympic trials. And also Ngozi and I were working at the cleaners during that summer. So I was like, we were at HSA cleaners, like so many fun times.
It was a good time.
Great times. But it was balancing all of those things. And I felt like I almost became resentful a little bit at times, just because I felt like I wasn't able to commit fully to both of those things that I wanted to do and two things that I was really passionate about. And it became this source of just tension for me. Do I need to decide between, doing neurobiology and pursuing that full time, or do I need to like pursue this track thing full time? Does that need to be my focus? And I think it was after my sophomore year when I finally realized that I really did not have to choose one or the other. And as long as I was enjoying what I was doing, then I can have both, or I can have everything, whatever I was doing. Ultimately, I ended up having to decide that research wasn't for me and that setting wasn't for me. And that was the primary reason I think I was so stressed about doing all of these things, was because I was forcing myself to do something that I had committed to and decided that it wasn't for me. So when it all came together for me was after my sophomore season. I was really struggling with this. And, my Coach Tolbert was such an amazing mentor for me that I felt like I could come to him with these issues and the way that I was feeling about it. And I told him that I was cutting my season short and I was going to take advantage of the Harvard study abroad and the summer opportunity. And I went to Dakar, Senegal, just to study the culture and the religion. And I had such an amazing summer and I didn't step foot on a track. And I just came back feeling so refreshed and so ready to perform and do track, and I missed it. And I also just realized that I wanted to do something different with neurobiology. And I was really interested in the intersection between biology and sociology, because I had taken some social classes. And that's when I knew that I wanted to study public health and research health inequities, which is what I'm doing now. And I also had an amazing track season that junior year. And I think it was because I just let my passions kind of drive me instead of doing what I felt like I needed to do. And I had found that I struck that balance between managing my time and studying at Harvard, studying what I wanted to study at Harvard, and also competing at a very elite level. And so when I turned pro, I forgo my senior season at Harvard to run for New Balance while still doing my Harvard classes. So I ended up graduating in 2019 as planned, but it allowed me to have that buffer period where I could feel out what it was like to be a professional athlete with the comfort of my college coach and my training group and that familiarity while also being in school and still being a senior at Harvard, which is a pretty big deal. So it prepared me really well. When I graduated from Harvard, I did want to put myself in a position where I was going to be very uncomfortable and I wanted to be somewhere new. So I ended up graduating and just picking up my things and moving to Austin, Texas. And I am a Massachusetts native, so this was a big move for me. And I moved to Austin. And at this point, I already have it under my belt. I know how to balance academics and running at an elite level. So when I decided to go to graduate school, which I had already knew I wanted to do, that was one of the reasons why I picked Austin, Texas. I was well prepared to do it all. And then when COVID hit, it was online. So I'm actually still in my classes, and they're still online because we're the School of Public Health. So, we don't feel completely comfortable going back completely in person yet. But it made things a little easier and a little bit more manageable just to be able to manage both things at one time. Because now, I'll finish training at maybe 2:00, and then instead of having to rush to UT campus to go take a class, I can log in online and do it. So it makes it a little bit easier. That being said, even if we were in person, I think it would be okay because we really were equipped with those skills. I mean, we were always ripping and running from practice to class and figuring it out and managing it and finding time to go to extra help, go to the MQC, get our work done, whether it be late nights or whatever. So I have no doubt that when we do return and resume in-person classes, it'll be completely manageable.
Yeah, 100%. And I think even on the aspect of like senior year and having it all figured out by senior year, but then you being a pro athlete and still being a big part of the team, and experiencing all the joys of senior year. Can you describe just how special it was to attend during senior week, the senior letter winner dinner with your Harvard teammates, and win the Radcliffe Prize given to the top female student athlete?
Yeah, I mean, that was amazing just because the team was just my rock. I mean, everything that I had gone through and every way that I had grown as an athlete was because of my team. And, we call it Keba Crew, the close group of sprinters and jumpers and hurdlers that we trained with every day. And just from day one being this long, like lanky freshman, and we didn't know how to do anything. And the girls just really coached me through everything. And they were also like these mentors to Ngozi and I. So I just went through everything with them, from like every bad race, every missed race, every like just up and down, every time I was struggling. If I ever needed advice on like taking my neurobiology classes, they were there for that. So they've seen everything. And it's just really beautiful because a lot of time, everyone sees me now and they just think I'm this amazing pro athlete who has it all together. And I'm just like so great at track, but they just did not see what it was like to actually build and grow an athlete, which is what happened at Harvard. And you have all these other D1 top schools, and when I was in high school, I wanted to be recruited by them, like LSU and Oregon, but you don't build athletes the same way. You recruit these amazing high school athletes. So what we went through at Harvard was just such a long, like beautiful process. So to come back and actually be at that event with my teammates and at the school where it all happened is such an amazing feeling. Tolbert would always say, our Coach Tolbert, it's like kind of like this, envision like an iceberg, and everyone sees like the tip of the iceberg, and that's like what success is, but they don't see everything below and what went into that. And so much went into it, like literally blood, sweat, and tears. Like I still have the scars on my legs, long jump and spiking myself. So that's why it's just so meaningful to have that experience from Harvard and with the girls, because it's such a unique experience, and no one else in the country who watches what I do now really understands like what is put into it at a place like Harvard, and how much you're balancing and what it actually means to perform at this level. So it was very meaningful.
Yeah, and you mentioned the aspect of it just being a process, and I think your time prior to the Olympic trials was also a process of COVID hitting, and then figuring out, okay, COVID's hit, now I have to train for a whole another year. to prepare for this 3 races
Yeah.
that qualify you for the Olympics, and then you go to the Olympics and you run 3 races, and that's that. So attending the Olympic trials, I know for me, watching you qualify was such an amazing experience, probably the best experience I've had this year. But can you describe your feeling after you felt, the feeling that you felt after you qualified for the Olympics and got the meet record and ran the second time to FloJo, and we're at Hayward Field where all the magic happens?
Yeah. I mean, I get this question a lot, and I always don't know how to answer it because it's such a surreal feeling. The entirety of Olympic trials is just, gosh, I hate to say it, but it's one of the worst periods of time in my life, just because it is so stressful and anxiety inducing. You have to be at your peak physical point. There is like nothing else that will get you on the team except for being in your physical prime, because it's such an individual sport. It's just you and the track. And you only have a couple of chances, right? And then everyone there is so amazing. I mean, the United States team is the hardest one to make. So you just never know what's going to happen. You can be the best in the country, but if you're not the best in the country on that day, then, it's tough. So yeah, I just wasn't sleeping or eating. And then when it came down to, being on the line for running and the prelims, I got through it. I had a phenomenal race. I mean, I ran a personal best in the prelims, went to the semis, ran another personal best. And that surprised me. I was shocked with those times. My coach wasn't, but I just absolutely was. So when it came to the final, I felt prepared, and I had envisioned myself winning and coming in first across the line about 1,000 times before I actually showed up to the race. But of course, when it happens, it's a completely different feeling. I remember being on the starting line. Allison Felix, who's the most decorated track and field athlete of all time, was, to my right on the outside of me. And I remember thinking, if I can just beat her to the 20 meters, I can set myself up, and I can at least compete and chase or whatever I need to do to get across the line and just make the team. Because at this point, my only goal was to be an Olympian. And I remember the gun going off, and I catch Allison and I'm chasing her to 20. And then I just completely black out. I'm like, it's like no feeling I would ever feel before, I'd probably ever feel again. It's just like this serious intensity, completely blacking out. And then the next thing I remember is being halfway across or halfway through the straight, about 40 meters left of the race, and I am in front. I don't feel anyone around me. And at this moment, I knew I was going to be an Olympian. And then a couple more steps, and I'm like, oh wait, I'm winning this race. I'm going to be a national champion too. And it was a surreal moment. I mean, I threw my hands in the air, and I got a lot of criticism for that because you're not supposed to do that when you're running. But it was like something just overtook me where I was so filled with joy that my dream of being an Olympian was coming true. And after the whole COVID year and everything, and waiting so long for it, it was surreal. I was so excited. And then I crossed the line, I look up and I see that time, which at the time was the second fastest time in history. So second to FloJo, who everyone knows FloJo is a legend. I couldn't believe that either. So I was like, oh my, I literally felt like I was in a dream. And it was crazy. I mean, I had pictured it so many times in my head, but for it to actually be happening in real life was just earth-shattering to me. So, and then to have my friends there. So Ngozi had come with a couple of other Harvard tracksters too. Anna Solger, Karina Joyner, and Micah Meekins, all from our team came to support me. And they were the only ones there, right? So my family wasn't there. Nobody was there, except my coach and then my best friends from Harvard track and field. So to share that moment with them was so amazing, because at the same time, I was like, oh my gosh, my friends are here. I have to make the team because I can't go back to them sad. Like they flew all the way out here, and it was a long journey to get to Eugene, Oregon. So I was just so happy and then overjoyed. And then suddenly my mindset had shifted. I'm like, okay, I made the team. I have this time. Now I'm a favorite for the gold medal at the Olympics. So now I had to quickly readjust and be like, okay, I got to get ready to medal at the Olympic Games. So it was a whirlwind.
It was so cool to experience, and from the perspective of being a fan on the stage and screaming and being so excited for you, and just to see how much you've gone through and how much from freshman year all the way through, and even you qualifying for the Olympics, or qualifying for the Olympic trials your freshman year and getting six. Like a lot of people don't know that. You just persevering and continuing and just being who you are was such a great experience to watch. And so you go to the Olympics, you're there, you're in holding for how many hours, and then you're at the Olympics and you're there, and it's an isolating experience. And we kind of talked through this a lot of like, just like the post-Olympic crash and what that looks like. And I would ask, do you have any advice for a student athlete on how to prioritize their mental health, especially you being in an environment where performance anxiety is high and you're around a lot of other athletes and you guys are isolated and what that looks like? Just like any advice for any student athletes on that?
Yeah, this was a huge topic at the Olympics this year, not just with track and field, but even if anyone followed the conversations with like Simone Biles and just so many other athletes. And I think a big part of it was because this Olympics is like the most proximity I feel like everyone's had to social media. I mean, back in 2016, I think, Instagram was just getting started. We were on social media, but we weren't quite, like, the world didn't revolve around it the way it does now. And so now everyone is in just such close proximity to one another via the internet. So whenever an athlete performs, it's almost like we instantly go to the internet. And then when we were at the Olympic Games, when we didn't have any friends or family who were allowed to be in Tokyo, we were engaging with them through our phones. And even if we're not on our phones, it's still kind of like the pressure and like the mental pressure and emotional pressure of competing at a level like this. And everyone's kind of relying on you, everyone's supporting you. And like, even if they're disappointed, they're not really disappointed at you, but it feels like they are. And that's a hard thing to kind of trick yourself out of. And then of course, there are people who are bullying you on the internet. I mean, I remember having a really bad semifinal race and just getting all types of hate on Twitter and being tagged in it. And that was really tough. But I think for any advice for anyone who's dealing with that type of pressure and anxiety and mental health things with sports is just to kind of take a step back and remember why you're doing the sport. And that's really important, to just remember why you love what you're doing. And that's how I typically fuel and go about anything that I do. It's just through love and passion, and just remembering that what anyone else thinks or has to say about your performance just has nothing to do with you, right? And that's so much easier said than done. But it's something that we really had to practice even in college too. We set such high expectations for ourselves, especially student athletes at Harvard, who are so used to just being excellent and wanting to just we're so ambitious, right? And you just want to be your best self. So when you can't achieve that at any given time, it can be really hard. But it's so important to remember that we are human and you do things because you love it. Right. And maybe other people don't remember that you're human, but as long as you remember that, then it's going to be fine. But yeah, that's a big topic right now amongst professional sports. And I think that there are going to be a lot of initiatives moving forward to deal with that and to help with that, especially as we move into this crazy age of social media, and you have, Zuckerberg in the metaverse, and everyone's going to be connected via the internet now. So, it's a very important conversation to continue.
100%. And even like the aspect of transitioning out of the Olympics, of 4 months post Olympics, like what's next for you in terms of training? Like obviously Paris 2024 is not that far down the line. And academically you're finishing up your master's in the spring. So how have you transitioned post Olympics, and kind of what does that look like? What does your day-to-day look like now?
Yeah, so it was a big transition for me. So I went from just, this arbitrary pro New Balance athlete who runs track, which is cool, to, this is Olympic medalist, which is just a huge difference in terms of just lifestyle and work and sponsorship opportunities and things like that. So I remember, you mentioned the post-Olympic crash in the previous question, and I forgot to address it. But when I came back from the Olympics, it was a very sudden emotional crash. You're on this insane high at the Olympics, and I was riding it from trials, to be honest, and then it's all over and you're kind of like, okay, well, what now? And for me, that was just constant interviews, constant media, constant having to go out and do shoots, constant trying to build this brand and narrative. And it became such a stressor in my life. And then at the same time, I was still doing school and trying to focus on that. And so it became a lot for me. But as I typically do, I mean, I figured out how to get through it and to get my footing. And I think, you know, my experiences from being at Harvard really helped with that. I'm not sure how I would have handled it otherwise. And I have my mentors. I mean, I still talk to my college coach about it all the time. And he's there when I need to take a deep breath or to send me a couple books on how to manage it. But these days it's really, I'm training for World Championships 2022, which is really exciting because those are in Eugene, Oregon. So having a World Championships in the United States is a very big deal. It's going to be very exciting. So if anyone is interested in following with that, I think that's end of June. And then the trials are early June in Eugene, Oregon as well. So I'll be spending a lot of time in Eugene.
Well, that's where the magic happens.
Where the magic happens. Hey, the Hayward magic. So I'll be training for that. I'm still in my classes. I am studying epidemiology at UT Austin and healthcare administration, and I'm really enjoying that. And I'm also interning at Leidos and doing my research on health equity, specifically health literacy and cultural competence among veterans. So just doing what I love and making time for it, and also cuddling with my pug Rico whenever I get a chance.
And trying to get the balance of your sleep and your strain and all those things in.
Yeah.
But we've been using Whoop. This is my last question in terms of Whoop,
Oh, yeah.
but we've been using Whoop since we were freshmen and beta tested in 2015. So I'd love to kind of hear your perspective on how Whoop has played a role in your training. And it was actually founded by a Harvard squash player. So
yeah, I remember when Will came to speak to us. He was the Harvard squash player who founded Whoop, and he spoke to us when we were freshmen. And I remember we were like, "What? Like, we don't need to do this. Like, we're fine." And we didn't really take advantage of it at the time until a little bit later. I mean, we had it, and I think we just took it for granted. And we took for granted how much, like I mentioned before, our coach he was so invested in every part of us as athletes, and that included our recovery and making sure that we were getting enough sleep and eating the right stuff and basically the holistic picture of an athlete. And that's how I use my Whoop now, is just to monitor myself as this whole person, right? So I'm not just going to show up at the track and just run fast times. I need to make sure that I'm taking care of myself. I need to make sure that I'm getting the adequate amount of sleep, figuring out what affects my recovery. So if that's eating dinner past 8 p.m., am I noticing a pattern and that's not helping me and helping me have a great practice the next day, I got to cut it. If I'm not drinking enough water, seeing how that affects me. If I have a glass of wine the night before, I see how that affects me. So it's been actually a really invaluable tool for me. And I even use it during my training sessions as well. I monitor my heart rate during training and see how fast I can recover between intervals. So I'm actually really grateful for Will for introducing this into our lives and also giving us that lifetime membership since we are the OGs. But yeah, now Whoop has been actually a very integral part of my training and just a part of my lifestyle. I try to use it when I compete as well, because I like to know how I'm feeling like post and pre-competition. But also for big events like the Olympics, I might not take a look at the app just because I don't want to know how recovered I am. It might not be great. But yeah, it's been awesome. And also for jet lag and traveling, it's cool to see how that affects me.
yeah, we love the Whoop. I remember we used to take it off all the time, but then we started to realize the importance of understanding our strain, understanding our sleep and recovery and things like that.
Now we're obsessed.
Yeah, now we're obsessed. Now we wear it all the time. But those are all my questions. I don't know, Jojo, if you had anything.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I had a gazillion questions. I mean, we could probably have, all night long kind of dinner conversation, but I want to give people the opportunity to ask a question, and you can just unmute yourself or you can do it in the chat. But wow, what a whole lineup of, like, your journey is so interesting. From, I had questions about Senegal and just taking a load off, right? And
Yeah.
you're talking about your post-Olympic experience, and clearly you've done a lot of work to manage, what you do, and also have some kind of balance, whether it's with the academics and the, and the training. So I don't want to overshadow. I do believe there'll be people who would like to ask a question, and sometimes it takes a minute to get courage, but I'm hoping someone will take off mute, because Gabby's amazing.
Hey,
I'll
Gabby, John Powers here. I was fortunate to watch your race in Tokyo, was in the mix zone afterwards,
Oh,
right for the Boston Globe. Wondering, kind of looking back, you look at what was it like? I mean, so many athletes did it on the day there, especially those who had to wait a year. I mean, just, you anchor the relay that theoretically in May you're not on. On the 200, you make it happen in the last 30 meters. And looking back, how much of it was just, you made it happen in the moment?
yeah. I mean, that's a great question. It is ultimately kind of like pure grit. You can prepare like so much for it, right? And that's what we all do. People don't see it, but literally all we do all day, all year is prepare for these moments. And ultimately we're all doing it. And it comes down to just how much you want it on that day. I remember so vividly, like the last 30 meters of that 200 meter final at the Olympics. And I was thinking I might not medal. I'm fighting for this so hard. Me and Shelly are fighting for this medal spot, and one of us is not going to get it. And we're both, very elite athletes. We both are deserving of a medal, but only one person's going to come out with it, right? And I just remember thinking, I have to relax. The last thing my coach said to me before I went into the check-in tent was, whatever you do, stay relaxed. And that's what I did, because I felt myself getting tight. And that was the difference between third and fourth, which is the difference between having an Olympic medal versus not. So yeah, a lot of it just comes down to that and that mentality. That being said, that's something that I do practice in training. When I step to the line to do any type of rep in training, I picture it being an Olympic race, just so I can practice that like intensity. And so when it comes down to the moment, I do feel like I'm prepared to know what to do. But like I said, everyone probably does that. So
Thank you.
Gabby, Paul George,
hey.
wonderful races in Tokyo, fantastic to watch. With the Beijing Winter Games coming up very soon, there's going to be even tighter COVID protocols in place. What would you recommend that the athletes do with the restrictive procedures they'll have to face?
Stay on top of it. Oh my gosh, there were a number of athletes in Tokyo who were not able to compete, or had to be, or flew all the way there and they watched the Olympics from the hotel in Tokyo. And it was so tragic to see that happen. And some of them did follow the protocols and were unlucky, and some of them just kind of didn't, because it is overwhelming. There's a lot they throw at you in terms of the COVID restrictions. My advice would be to follow every bit of instruction very closely and make sure that you are not missing out on your competition. Also, it can be a little bit frustrating while you're there. I mean, we had COVID testing every single day, and then everything was so restrictive. We couldn't do anything or go anywhere. And we had to have our COVID tests done by a certain time every day. So just keep the morale high and understand why it's happening. Because it's so easy to get frustrated, right? When you're just not having the experience that you wanted or had hoped for. But it's so important and much better to just deal with the restrictions than, watching the games from a hotel room because you've been quarantined. So it really does happen. So yeah.
So Gabby, I have
Thanks very much.
Yeah.
There's a follow-up question to that of how was it to compete, given that every competition you've done before is, presumably with fans and excitement and noise, and how was that to be able to stay at that level of you know,
Yeah.
that level of competition with no fans.
Shockingly, it really did not make a difference to me, because as soon as I walked out to the stadium, I felt like I was going to faint. I was like, this feels very, very Olympic. Like, I did not notice that there were no fans there. That being said, they did paint the seats in a way that it looked like they were fans. So unless you were like literally in the stands yourself, it looked like people were there. I think the only thing is like you couldn't hear the fans and hear the cheering and the noise, and that might affect some athletes, but for me, I tend to, like I said, I black out when I'm racing, and I don't really pay attention to that kind of stuff. But the experience was so surreal, and the feeling and the magic of being in the actual stadium kind of overtook that aspect of it. That being said, I'm really excited to have fan for World Championships. I think it's going to be so much fun, and it's going to feel amazing. But it didn't affect me too much. We had each other. I think it almost kind of just made the athletes even closer, because we had nothing to do but be in the Olympic Village and hang out with each other and bond. All the American athletes across different sports, we were all in that building, just in the common areas all day, every day. So that was kind of a fun silver lining of it.
All right, one more, anyone?
I have a question. Hey, Gab. I could probably ask you this anytime, but I'm just wondering, is there any specific way that you want to leverage your newfound success in limelight? I mean, you've got 250 plus followers on Instagram. You're getting all of these different kind of endorsements and things. And I just wonder, you have your goals as far as public health, but is there any way that you think about using your platform as an athlete?
Yeah, I think about this a lot. And my platform it grew so quickly, right? And so I had to very, very quickly post trials and post Olympics think about how I can actually just make the world a better place with my platform, and how can I make a difference. It's interesting. A lot of times I would just think, even as a pro athlete before all of this, I was like, how can I still contribute to society, just, being a professional athlete? Because my dream was always to go into public health and be that change. And so I kind of felt like I was losing that a little bit. But now I feel like so lucky, because I do have a platform to talk about the health equity issues that I'm passionate about. And, all of these media platforms give me that opportunity to speak about it. And they give me the space and the encouragement to talk about that and kind of just spread light on the issue and maybe get people thinking, get people talking about it. I'm always being asked about my studies at UT. My platform has given me the opportunity to take an internship at Leidos that I'm doing now, that I really love, and actually make a difference and do research and present it to these people who have the resources to follow through with it. So that's been a really, really exciting piece of it. And also just kind of encouraging anyone who might be looking up to me, who might be kind of at a stage in their life where it might be helpful to see my journey, and to see that you can excel at whatever you want to do, and you don't have to choose between going to your dream school or a school that is right for you, and pursuing whatever it might be, whether it's athletics or another activity. And just seeing that you can do that, right? And you don't have to follow anyone else's journey or pathway, and you can challenge the status quo and kind of just do your own thing and make your own path. And that's what I really like to see. And I, especially with younger girls who reach out to me for advice, or parents, I get that all the time, quite a few times a day. And I just like to just have that be that kind of that visual for them. And so, yeah, I think that's just been one of the most rewarding parts of having this Olympic opportunity. It was how my platform has grown, and I've been able to use it for that.
Yeah, that's a big task. It's really
Yeah,
cool.
I mean, it means a lot. And like, just to have anyone look up to me like that. I looked up to Autumn when I was a freshman. She was my captain when I was a freshman, and she's such a big part of why I joined the team, and a big part of when I talk about the foundational skill set that I needed to have the career that I have now. I mean, she's got to be at least like 25% of that on her own. So if I can have any impact on people the way Autumn has on me, then that makes everything worth it. So
You're so sweet.
That's awesome. Sometimes you don't know the effect you have on people. That's awesome. Well, Gabby, thank you so much for sharing your story, and wow, super inspirational. Just really cool. I'm really excited to follow you, and maybe I'm like, well, I could go to Eugene. I don't know. It's really fun.
A long trip.
Yeah, that's what I hear. So I got to figure out how to get there first.